Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very special bulletin today, the 17th day of November, and it's a bit of a cloudy day today, still very good and a very good time of the year here in Brisbane, where the temperature is 24 degrees, and as I mentioned before, bit cloudy, and it's going to remain that way. Well, last night was the Queensland Premier's reception for the Indian community, the annual function that happens. We'll bring some glimpses of that to you later on. As we know, as for COVID and other restrictions, the numbers were down this year, but nevertheless, it did go ahead. And a point to note is if it's on a Tuesday night, one person who's not there is me, because Tuesday night is my Gayatri Mandir or temple night, so regardless of whatever happens, I don't miss that. Well, today we have the news, we'll have the coverage of that, we'll also look at some glimpses of the Premier's function, then of course we will have the Daily India Report and upcoming events in this segment. Then at 10 a.m. We'll have the weekly real estate update with Usha Chandra, who will be joining us right here in the studios with all the updates. Right now, let's get this show on the road. Getting on the road, let's first go to Northern Territory, where COVID is spreading.
The highest daily number of local cases ever recorded in the Northern Territory as the government faces the reality COVID could take hold.
This is obviously a serious escalation in the COVID-19 situation in the Northern Territory.
We're in a desperate race to track this down.
Already in its deadly grasp, some of the Territory's most vulnerable. The 9 new cases are Aboriginal Territorians across 2 households in Katherine. The oldest is 71, the youngest, twin 5-year-old girls. A 65-year-old woman is in Darwin's Hospital. Meanwhile, Catherine's Hospital joins a pub, a school, a fish and chip shop and an Indigenous health service as exposure sites, the government now racing to ensure no disruption to services.
With double vaccinated staff, with daily testing, we can have people return to work under those conditions.
The town's lockdown will continue until Monday night, but authorities are also mystified by a possible missing link in the long window between cases in the outbreak. The concern is the virus could have spread even further during that time. To reduce the risk, everyone across the entire Northern Territory is now required to wear a mask if they can't physically distance until Monday night. The other coronavirus battleground is the remote Gulf community of Robinson River. Vaccination rates are high, but overcrowding is rife. A Northern Territory senator today calling for urgent action after revealing it was her sister who tested positive in the community yesterday.
This is a case of life and death here, and unless families have an ability to be able to isolate in their own home, how can they when you have 15 to 20 people in a house?
A testing and vaccination blitz continues as authorities try to outpace COVID in a race with deadly consequences.
And the race is on, and of course it is very heartbreaking to see that happening right now in Northern Territory. And of course this was going to happen, and as the borders are open and restrictions ease, there will be more and more cases which will be coming up. And of course, we will just learn to have to live with it and deal with it the best as we can. So that's where the argument is. Some people are saying that the restrictions are easing too early and that the borders should still be a little bit tighter at this point in time. Of course, provisions should be made for people in need, but it should not just be open willy-nilly. So how many of Australians are vaccinated? Where are the results at this point in time? Let's take a look at this report.
Nationally, more than 83% of the adult population is fully vaccinated, but that figure ranges from as low as 70% in Western Australia to nearly 97% in the ACT, a difference of more than 26 percentage points. That gap blows out to more than 60 percentage points among those aged 12 to 15. In WA, less than 1/3 of this age group are fully vaccinated, compared to more than 93% in the ACT, just under 74% in New South Wales and nearly 72% in Victoria. Surging COVID cases in these jurisdictions saw especially strong vaccine uptake among children. The percentage of 12 to 15s receiving a first dose per day peaked at nearly 5% in the ACT and just under 3% in New South Wales and Victoria. This didn't begin to slow until first dose coverage in this age group had reached about 70% in the ACT, 50% in Victoria and 40% in New South Wales. In states that have succeeded in keeping Delta out, however, vaccine uptake has been much slower. In South Australia and the Northern Territory, less than 1% of 12 to 15s per day are receiving a first shot, while in Tasmania, Queensland and Western Australia, rates have slowed to roughly 0.5% a day, a fall of at least 2/3 compared to their peaks. In both Queensland and WA, vaccine uptake among 12 to 15s began to slow when coverage hit about 27%. Adult vaccinations in these states also began to slow around the same time. By then, about 64% of adults in Queensland and 70% of adults in WA had received at least one dose.
At least one dose, but of course there are concerns held over the low vaccination rate as per this report.
In the small town of Moree, an hour south of the Queensland border, health staff are working overtime.
It concerns me because, we don't want anyone to actually be physically put in hospital because of COVID, because our hospital would not be equipped to handle that influx of patients.
The regional community is in the grip of its first major COVID outbreak. The first case was detected a fortnight ago. Now more than 150 people have the virus, nearly all of them Aboriginal and a third children.
We had a scare a couple of months ago, but that was just a transient, But this is, it's here.
Staff at the local Aboriginal Health Service hoped the outbreak would prompt more people to get vaccinated, but first dose rates have risen by just 1% over the past fortnight. Only around 1 in 5 of their Aboriginal patients are fully immunised.
A lot of our elders got vaccinated as soon as they could. I got vaccinated as soon as I could because I deal with a lot of clients. A lot of people won't get it because they either Google it or they listen to Facebook.
I remember the AIDS program, the advertising for the AIDS program. I mean, that put the fear of God into everybody, and it worked. And I think that's a tactic we need to take, because the younger population aren't listening.
Concern is growing ahead of the reopening of the Queensland border next month.
Moree's the pit stop before they actually cross the border. So I reckon our cases will probably rise once they open everything up.
If the atmosphere doesn't change, we're going to have a death in Moree, and then all hell will break loose then.
The Moree outbreak is a microcosm of how COVID has disproportionately affected Indigenous communities across the state. Indigenous people account for 8.3% of positive cases since June, despite being just over 3% of the New South Wales population. Around half were unvaccinated, while almost 30% were children under 11 who were too young to get the jab.
Now, how did you fare with dose 1? For Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, this is further compounded because there's a greater risk of transmission as well as having worse impact from COVID. And this is due to the younger age distribution, higher rates of underlying conditions. Add on top of all of that a lower rate of vaccination, and what you have is, a perfect storm.
23 vaccines today. Dudley, what's tomorrow look like?
Across the border in Brisbane's...
So there we go, and that is the case happening there. Of course, there is always going to be resistance to the thing, as she mentioned there, that the young ones are just not listening. But is it just the young ones? There are many out in the community. As you can see from this next report, what people could do, and look at the number of protesters who have come out in Victoria.
On the streets of the city that endured the world's longest lockdown, Victoria's proposed new pandemic laws have become a polarising community flashpoint. In the latest act of a public campaign, last night protesters mounted a vigil outside State Parliament as those inside prepared to debate the bill today.
I can see why it has happened. We've had essentially a 2-year in and out of lockdown situation, so people are very sensitive.
The powers that are granted to the Health Minister under this Act are undefined. That means they are, in essence, unlimited.
The legislation is designed to replace Victoria's state of emergency powers, which have been used since March 2020 but were never designed for the long term and have had to be renewed regularly. They're due to expire again on December 15th, by which time the government hopes to enact the new laws. The legislation would transfer the power to declare a pandemic from the Chief Health Officer to the Premier. It gives the government the same powers it currently has under emergency orders to do things like restrict the movement of citizens, ban gatherings and force businesses to close. They could be extended up to 3 months at a time without a maximum time period. Under the bill, the government must also release the health advice underpinning public health orders.
I say very mainstream people are very concerned about this bill.
Victoria's opposition has pounced on community concern over the proposed laws.
The bill itself is giving the government much more power to cause these lockdowns and to do this at will. It'll give the Premier the personal power to declare a pandemic, even if there's no infection in the country. He will be able to do that. So we say it's too much power.
The Victorian government argues the laws are in fact designed to create more checks and balances.
What we are now on the verge of is stepping out of this pandemic in a safe way into 2022.
Your average punter might look at these laws and think, well, we're coming out the other side of a pandemic. Why do we need new far-reaching legislation?
Whilst we are coming out of this, what this legislation does is frame around pandemic-specific provisions to both get us continue the path out of this pandemic, and if in any time in the future there are further pandemics that are appropriately declared, to give a pandemic-specific provision rather than the general state of emergency arrangements.
So pandemic-specific provision rather than just a general provision is what they're looking for. Well, we'll have to read that report there as we move on. And right now it's time to go to our daily India report. After that, we'll bring to you glimpses of last night's Queensland Premier's reception for the Indian community. Right now, let's welcome Ankita with the daily India report.
Welcome to the Daily India report that brings you glimpses of the changing India and the growing engagement of the Indian diaspora with India. In our first story, India opens doors to vaccinated foreign tourists after 18 months. India has begun allowing fully vaccinated foreign tourists to enter the country on regular flights. India is finally easing coronavirus restrictions after 18 months because of fall in infections coupled with rise in vaccinations. Tourists entering India must be fully vaccinated, follow all COVID-19 protocols and test negative for the virus within 72 hours before their flight. Many of them may, however, also need to undergo a post-arrival COVID-19 test at the airport. However, travellers from countries which have agreements with India for mutual recognition of vaccination certificates, such as the US, the UK and many European nations, can leave the airport without undergoing a COVID-19 test. This is the first time India has allowed foreign tourists on commercial flights to enter the country since March 2020, when it imposed one of the toughest lockdowns in the world to contain the pandemic. Fully vaccinated tourists on chartered flights were allowed to enter the country starting last month. It comes as coronavirus infections have fallen significantly, with daily new cases hovering at just above 10,000 for over a month. To encourage travellers to visit India, the government plans to issue 500,000 free visas. The moves are expected to boost the tourism and hospitality sector that was battered by the pandemic. Nearly 79% of India's adult population has received at least one vaccine dose, while 38% is fully vaccinated. The federal government has asked state administrations to conduct door-to-door campaigns to accelerate the vaccine campaign. Less than 3 million foreign tourists visited India in 2020, a drop of more than 75% from 2019. This resulted in only $30 billion of earnings from tourism. Covert set to go global with over 12 countries that are in talks with Government of India to borrow technology-led innovation. Covert, India's tech backbone for the COVID-19 vaccination drive, may soon go global as more than 12 countries have been in final stage of discussion to receive and use India's technology. A South American country is among 12 nations where the Indian government has sent the signed memorandum of understanding, awaiting the acceptance from their side. South America consists of Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, Paraguay, Peru, Suriname, Uruguay, and Venezuela. The majority of the other countries which have shown interest are from Africa and Central Asia. The platform has proven to be successful in India, where it has also handled 250 million vaccinations in a day with a load of over 800 vaccinations per second. The Modi government will be sharing Covert with other countries as a product licensed by the central government, which will be available to all interested countries for free until perpetuity. The only condition would be that the software should not be allowed to be used for repackaged as a platform for sale. To demonstrate the capabilities of the software, the government had earlier held a virtual global conclave for health and technology experts from across the globe on 5th July. Despite several questions over the capability of the platform to handle the load of humongous vaccination drive, Covert has fared successfully. Interestingly, every time when India achieved more than 10 million jabs in a day, the tech platform handled more than 400 vaccinations per second. India's Minister of State for External Affairs V. Muralidharan paid an official visit to the Republic of Rwanda to co-chair the first India-Rwanda Joint Commission meeting held in Kigali on 14th to 15th November 2021. Indian Minister of State for External Affairs and Parliamentary Affairs V. Muralidharan paid an official visit to the Republic of Rwanda to co-chair the first India-Rwanda Joint Commission meeting held on 14 to 15 November 2021 in Kigali. During the visit, MOS called on President of the Republic of Rwanda, Paul Kagame. President Kagame conveyed his greetings to Prime Minister Modi and spoke about the strategic partnership between India and Rwanda and expressed his desire to work with India to achieve the full potential of this special relationship. He also invited the Indian leadership to participate in the CHOGM summit to be held in Rwanda in 2022. MOS briefed the President of Rwanda about the deliberations that were held in the JCM. MOS recalled President Kagame's visits to India and also thanked him for addressing the Raisina dialogue virtually in April 2021. He also invited President Kagame to visit India on an official visit. Muralidharan co-chaired the Joint Commission meeting with Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Rwanda, Dr. Vincent Biruta. Both sides discussed existing state of bilateral relations in areas of mutual interest, including health, energy, agriculture, ICT, education, civil aviation, culture, defense, security, and infrastructure development, and expressed interest to enhance cooperation in these areas. The two sides also discussed regional, international, and multilateral issues. Both sides also agreed to work with each other for early conclusion of pending MOUs and carry forward the work under the existing institutional mechanisms. The Rwandan side expressed their thanks for the development aid and cooperation provided by India. A new report says that number of Indians studying in the US dropped by nearly 13% in 2020 to 21. The number of Indians studying in the United States decreased by nearly 13% in 2020 to 21 as compared to the previous academic year. This is according to an annual report released by the Institute of International Education. USA officials attributed the drop in numbers to the impact of the COVID pandemic. However, the US remains a top destination for international students, and Indian students still constitute the second largest group of international students in the US after those from China. Senior officials of the US Embassy in New Delhi shared some of the details from the report and said that over 62,000 student visas were issued this summer alone, more than in any previous year. Counselor for Cultural and Educational Affairs at the US Embassy, Anthony Miranda, said the figures on student visas indicate that the downturn in the number of Indians studying in the US was a COVID blip, and that the overall trend line has been generally positive. He spoke about the global impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on education and student mobility, and that the US too suffered its impact with a drop in the number of international students studying in the US. He asserted that notwithstanding the impact of the pandemic, the US remains a top destination for international students, welcoming over 914,000 international students from over 200 places of origin. Last year, the US government and US higher education institutions implemented measures to welcome international students in person, online and via hybrid learning methods, guaranteeing that opportunities and resources to international students remained robust. Singapore to include India and Indonesia in vaccinated travel lane. Allows quarantine-free travel for fully vaccinated travellers from 29th November. Singapore is planning to allow quarantine-free travel for fully vaccinated passengers from India and Indonesia from November 29th. Singapore will add 3 more countries early next month as it hopes to reclaim and rebuild the country's status as an international aviation hub with global connectivity. Presently, there are 13 countries including Canada, Australia and Germany under Singapore's vaccinated travel lane program. In addition, travellers from Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates will be able to enter Singapore from December 6th in a further expansion of the VTL scheme. Travellers under the VTLs are not subject to stay home notice on arrival. Instead, they will be required to produce a negative pre-departure test taken within 2 days prior to departure and undergo an on-arrival PCR test. Addressing a COVID-19 multi-ministry task force press conference, Transport Minister S. Iswaran said Singapore and India have been discussing the mutual recognition of vaccination certificates. Since November 12th, India has started recognizing vaccination certificates issued by Singapore. The Health Ministry has also updated its public health assessment and will upgrade India to Category 2 from November 19th. The Category 2 classification means that a country either has similar or lower COVID-19 incidence rates than Singapore and other VTL countries. Applications for short-term visitors and long-term pass holders will start on November 22nd for travellers from India and Indonesia, while travellers from Qatar, Saudi Arabia and UAE will be able to apply from November 29th. In 2019, India accounted for about 7% of passenger arrivals at the Changi airport. Serum Institute is likely to start vaccine supplies to COVAX this week. 8 months after the government imposed a hold on all major exports of COVID-19 vaccines, India-based Serum Institute of India is likely to start supplying Covishield in the second week of November to the COVAX International Vaccine Facility. Serum Institute of India supplied to COVAX till infection started surging in March in India when it had to suspend all major exports. The company is expected to supply 25 million doses to the COVAX facility led by the Gavi Vaccine Alliance, World Health Organization and the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations till the end of December. India had suspended exports of COVID vaccines at the beginning of the second wave of the pandemic. In September, Health Minister Mansukh Mandavia announced resumption of the shipments of vaccines to the COVAX program. Bansali postpones Gangubai release to avoid clash with RRR. S.S. Rajamouli, who is ready with his upcoming movie RRR, took to his social media to thank Bollywood director Sanjay Leela Bansali. Sanjay Leela Bansali's upcoming movie Gangubai Kathiawadi has averted a clash with RRR and has postponed the release date of his movie. Touched by his gesture, Rajamouli thanked the producer Jayanti Lal Gada and director Sanjay Leela Bansali. The Alia Bhatt starrer Gangubai Kathiawadi was originally slated for January 6th release. The makers issued a statement on November 15th announcing the new release date of the film. It is reported that the release of Gangubai Kathiawadi has been postponed to February 18th, avoiding a box office clash with RRR. Alia Bhatt plays the lead actress in both RRR and Gangubai Kathiawadi. Rajamouli's directorial RRR is a pan-India movie which is being made in multiple languages and stars Telugu's biggest duo NTR and Ram Charan. That's all for this bulletin of Daily India Report. Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much, Ankita, for that report. And as I said before, that right now we'll go to the Queensland Parliament House. Well, first of all, Minister Leon Leonard as the Multicultural Minister, is welcoming everyone.
Warmly acknowledge, but I must acknowledge, of course, our wonderful Premier, Anastasia Palaszczuk, who's here on the stage tonight, and those who will make a contribution in our formal speeches in just a moment. Dr. Maha Sinnathamby, Mrs. Achana Singh, and of course Mr. Shyam Das. But can I just start with a few comments about the year that has been? Well, what a year 2021 has been, and I feel tremendously grateful to be standing here with you all tonight and to have had the pleasure of celebrating our rich cultural diversity at events with you throughout the year, including Holi Festival of Colours, the Tamil and Indian New Year celebrations and India Day Fair, Diwali celebrations at South Bank and King George Square, and of course so many more. And we have been able to come together and celebrate these amazing events because Queenslanders have pulled together during the pandemic. You have responded to the Premier, the Health Minister and Chief Health Officer's call, responded to the health advice again and again to keep our community safe and to get vaccinated. And we are here together celebrating such a special reception because of that strong response. Thank you so, so much. I know many of the community leaders here tonight have worked alongside us to take important health messages to the community, and that you continue to do so, and I thank you so much for your leadership and for your partnership. But enough from me. I have the great pleasure of now inviting our Queensland Premier and Minister for the Olympics, Anastasia Palaszczuk, to say a few words.
Well, thank you, Leanne, and good evening, everyone. This is a beautiful night tonight to all come together for this very special reception where we honour each and every one of you. Can I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we gather and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Can I acknowledge the Deputy Premier, Stephen Miles, who's here with us this evening, the Treasurer, Cameron Digg. There are a large number of ministers, members of Parliament and assistant ministers that are with us, my Director General, Rachel Hunter. But I do want to especially acknowledge the Minister for Multicultural Affairs, Leanne Linnart. She does such a wonderful job. She's always out and about at different events. And doesn't she look absolutely beautiful in her sari this evening? And also Minister Enoch looks lovely in her sari this evening.
Yeah, she does.
And can I also acknowledge, of course, our very good friend, Maha Sinnathamby, who's with us here this evening. Of course, our wonderful Honorary Consul who's with us here, Honorary Consul Singh, and of course, Shyam Das, the President of the Federation of Indian Communities of Queensland. But most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, one and all, thank you for coming to Parliament House this evening. And it's our honour to welcome you here once again. We've got, larger numbers than we had the previous time we've held this event, but I do hope we get back next year to have our 800, 900 people here on the green. That would be absolutely terrific. And we're on track to do that with our very strong response to COVID. Well, first of all, we all know that the wonderful Diwali Festival Lights ended last week, and I trust you all had a great celebration, one that has hope and renewal at its heart. And don't we need a little more of that after the last 18 months that we've been through? Tonight we're keeping the celebration going as we honour more than 74,000 Queenslanders of Indian heritage who contribute to making our state the wonderful state that Queensland is. And of course your community is at the heart of our strong multicultural community. Queenslanders with Indian ancestry enhance diversity and strengthen the foundations on which Queensland is built. Your families touch every part of our state and we are all the more richer for it. And you generously share your culture and hospitality with other Queenslanders through numerous festivals, celebrations and cultural events. These strong ties stretch beyond our borders and strengthen our relationship with India, an important trading partner, Queensland's fourth largest. But I also think everyone's very excited that we also have the Olympics for 2032.
Yeah, well done.
And you would have known some little changes we made with that. So I've taken on the portfolio of Minister for the Olympics. The Deputy Premier's assisting me with the Olympic infrastructure. We've got the Minister, Sterling Hinchcliffe, is assisting me with sport and engagement. And our Treasurer has taken on a really important trade portfolio as well. So I know that he's looking forward to meeting with as many of you as possible to discuss trade opportunities. We also know that India went through a very tough time with COVID this year. If you remember back in May, we called that meeting and we donated, the Queensland Government on behalf of the Queensland people donated $2 million through Red Cross to help people in India, and that was a very, very tough time. But tonight is a celebration, and you would think it would be odd if I did not mention one thing here tonight. Make sure you're vaccinated. Yes. Very important. Yes, and congratulations everyone, because you know, we are well on track. We are over 80% now first dose. We've hit the 70%, and I think Queensland can get up to that 90% double dose. And when that happens, it means the international borders will be open and families from overseas and abroad will be able to meet up once again. And that's the day that we all dream of, because I know how important your families are, especially the hardship that people are going through overseas. So friends, thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for coming along this evening. It's an honour to have each and every one of you here. Enjoy tonight. My ministers are here. I might just get them to put their hands up so you can see where they are. I can see quite a few of them scattered around. And please go and say hello, and just remember we have an open door and we'd love to hear any ideas that you have. Thank you once again for coming here, and I'll hand you back to your wonderful MC, Minister Leanne Leonard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Premier, and thank you for your beautiful message of hope and warmth. And of course, Diwali absolutely reflects just that. As anybody who knows me knows that I absolutely love Diwali. It's been something that we celebrate every single year in my local community, and many of my friends from Nudgee are here tonight. And that message of hope, that message of positive and light, always overcoming the darkness, is something that, as the Premier said so beautifully, we need every day, and we need not just across our community of Indian origin, but every Queenslander needs that, every Australian, I think everyone needs that around the world. So thank you so much for sharing the beautiful message of Diwali with the world. It is now my great pleasure to invite our next speaker, Dr. Maha Sinathambi, who I know needs no introduction, but I do acknowledge as the Chairman of Springfield City Group, but also importantly as a patron of the Federation of Indian Communities of Queensland that makes such a contribution across the state. And Maha, you always bring a message of positivity and resilience, and I look forward to hearing your message tonight as I do at each event we attend. Please.
Thanks very much for that. I think I'm really pleased for that. Friends, I start off by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we gather, the elders, past, present and future, and the great contribution they have done to make this country even more greater. The Honourable Anastasia Palaszczuk, Premier of Queensland, and Minister for Olympics, and our wonderful friend, wonderful friend. Give her a loud applause. Thank you very much, Premier, for hosting this function. You've done this year after year after year after year for the Indian community. Your continued support for the community over the years is truly appreciated. You can see what it is. If you had opened the borders here today, you would have had over 1,000 people here. I'd like to also acknowledge members of the Legislative Assembly. Shyam Das, President of FICQ, Jim Baggi is Chair of the Australia-India Business Council, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Premier, as you know, and you are aware, that the Indian community has grown from strength to strength, growing rapidly, and our current population in the country is about in excess of 750,000 people. and this is growing rapidly. This is expected to grow faster with the increasing trade that's happening between Australia and India. It's increasing also because of the political linkages between the two governments. It's coming very, very close. And every day sees us getting closer and closer to India and Australia. Friends, Australia is 2.4 times bigger than India. And India has a population of 1.3 billion. And our population is 25 billion. Australia is our new home for us, for our children, our grandchildren, and for generations to come. A country with ocean frontage, pristine ocean frontage. All the fish are having a wonderful time. There's nobody to catch them. Take your fishing rods. A great climate, and above all, and this is very important, above all, we are a democratic country. And in the eyes of the law, friends, we are all equal. We are all equal. What more do you want? What more do you want? What more do you want for you, yourself, your children, and for generations to come? Friends, in this country, you can do whatever you want, provided it is legal and right. I just want to say to you some of the performance of Indians overseas. Kamala Harris, Vice President of USA. How much more higher you want to go? Only one step before she becomes the president. CEO of Microsoft and Google are both Indians. And I looked at the Google and there are hundreds of them holding high positions. CEO of Abode and IBM are both Indians. 36% of scientists working in NASA are Indians. In UK, even the Chancellor of Exchequer is an Indian. Just go through this.
And ladies and gentlemen, so we'll leave that there. It's wonderful, and if everyone likes, we can replay the whole the part of all the speeches that took place. But we have to get ready for our next segment, which is the real estate update with Usha Chandra, and for this week's one, which is coming up at 10 a.m. And that, by the way, that coverage there was by Usha Chandra. That's the footage she captured because she was at the event. Of course, as I mentioned before, Tuesday nights I cannot go to any function or any event Tuesday night. I've already got a fixed commitment at Gayatri Temple. So ladies and gentlemen, with that I'd leave you there, and we will connect back at 10 a.m. with the weekly real estate update with Usha Chandra of Globe Realty. Until then, it's goodbye from me.